I never imagined my life would end up in a small, cold office that smelled like dust and old coffee. I was 64 years old. My hands were wrinkled, my back ached, and my heart felt heavier than it ever had. Across the table sat my husband, Richard Collins. We had been married for 41 years. He didn't look at me once. Not when I walked in. Not when I cried. Not even when I signed away what I thought was my life. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, fingers tapping on the table like he was late for something important. "Are you ready to proceed?" the lawyer asked. Richard nodded. "Yes." That was it, one word. No apology, no sadness, no goodbye. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab his arm and ask, how did we get here? But my voice was gone, swallowed by years of silence. So I signed. And I cried. People used to say I was lucky. "Margaret, you married a good man," they said. "Richard works hard. You should be grateful." So I was. I cooked his meals, washed his clothes, raised our 2 children, Laura and Michael, while Richard built his small construction business. I woke up at 5 a.m. for 40 years to pack his lunch, even when I had the flu, even when my mother died, even when my knees hurt so badly I could barely stand. I told myself this was marriage. Sacrifice. Love. But love should not make you feel invisible. The first crack appeared 3 years ago. Richard started coming home late, not once or twice, every night. "Work is busy," he said. I believed him. Then he changed his phone password. I noticed because Richard was never careful. He used to leave his phone everywhere, on the couch, on the kitchen counter. Once it fell into the sink and he laughed about it. Now he slept with it under his pillow. One night I reached for it. He woke up fast. "What are you doing?" he snapped. I froze. I was just checking the time. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Then he turned away. That night I didn't sleep. 6 months later, he asked for a divorce. Just like that. We were eating dinner, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, his favorite. "I want a divorce," he said, without lifting his fork. I laughed. I actually laughed. "Don't joke like that," I said. He looked at me then. His eyes were cold, empty. "I'm not joking." My fork dropped onto the plate. "Why?" I whispered. "We've grown apart." That was all he gave me. No explanation, no discussion, no counseling, just a quiet decision he had already made. I begged him to talk to me. He packed a bag that same night and left. Our children took his side. That hurt more than anything. "Dad deserves to be happy," Laura said over the phone. "What about me?" I asked. There was silence. Michael didn't even call. He sent a text. "You'll be fine, Mom." Fine. Like I was a broken chair you could push into a corner. Then came the lawyer. Richard wanted everything done fast, clean, quiet. The house. The savings. The land we bought 20 years ago. "All of it is in my name," Richard said calmly during our first meeting. She agreed. I turned to him, shocked. "I never agreed to that." He smiled slightly. "You signed the papers years ago, Maggie." My stomach dropped. "What papers?" I asked. "The business restructuring forms," he said. "You trusted me, remember?" I did remember. 10 years ago, Richard told me his accountant needed my signature. Something about taxes. He said it was nothing serious. "You don't need to read all that," he said back then, laughing. "You trust me, don't you?" I signed. Like a fool. The lawyer explained it slowly, like he was talking to a child. Legally, Richard owned almost everything. I could fight it, but it would take years. And money. Money I didn't have. "So what happens to me?" I asked. The lawyer cleared his throat. "You'll receive a small monthly support payment." "How small?" I asked. He told me the number. I felt dizzy. That amount wouldn't even cover my medication. Richard didn't blink. That was how I ended up signing those papers. Crying. Broken. Feeling stupid for trusting the man I gave my life to. When it was over, Richard stood up. "I'll have my assistant help you move your things," he said. "My things?" I asked. "You can't stay in the house," he replied. "I sold it." I felt the room spin. "You sold our house," I whispered. "It's not ours," he said flatly. "It's mine." I moved into a small rented room behind a hair salon. The walls were thin. I could hear hair dryers buzzing all day. At night, I lay on a narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. I cried quietly so the neighbors wouldn't hear. That was when the anger started to grow. Not loud. Not violent. Just steady. Like a fire that refuses to go out. 2 weeks later, something strange happened. I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Margaret Collins?" a woman asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "My name is Sandra Miller. I'm calling about your husband." "My ex-husband," I corrected. There was a pause. "Yes," she said. "Your ex-husband, I think we need to talk." My heart began to race. "Why?" I asked. She lowered her voice. "Because Richard lied to both of us." We met at a small cafe across town. Sandra was younger than me, maybe in her early 40s, stylish, nervous. She kept checking the door. "I don't have much time," she said. "Richard doesn't know I'm here." That name still made my chest tighten. "Who are you?" I asked. She swallowed hard. I was his partner." I waited for the word. "His mistress." She didn't say it, but I heard it anyway. I expected to feel rage. Instead, I felt tired. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Sandra reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. "I want the truth," she said, "and I think you deserve it too." She slid the folder across the table. Inside were documents. Bank statements. Property records. Things I had never seen before. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. "What is this?" I whispered. Sandra leaned forward. "This is everything Richard hid from you." My breath caught. Because as I looked closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A property listed under a different company name. A company I had never heard of. But the signature at the bottom of the page. It was mine. "I never signed this," I said, my voice shaking. Sandra nodded. "That's what I thought you'd say." I looked up at her. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "Richard forged your signature, Margaret, on more than one document." The cafe noise faded away. The laughter. The clinking cups. All gone. "You're sure?" I asked. "I'm certain," she said. "I work in finance. I noticed things didn't add up." My heart pounded so loudly, I thought I might faint. "If this is true," I said slowly, "then everything changes." Sandra nodded again. "Yes, it does." I stared at the papers. For the first time since signing those divorce papers, I stopped crying. Because something else replaced the tears. Hope. And it scared me. I didn't know yet how deep Richard's lies went. I didn't know who else was involved. And I didn't know that signing those papers, those painful, humiliating papers, was only the beginning. The truth was finally waking up. And it was coming for him. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my narrow bed, the folder Sandra gave me spread across my lap. The papers felt heavier than bricks. Every page carried a lie. Every signature that looked like mine made my stomach twist. Richard didn't just leave me. He erased me. The next morning, I went somewhere I hadn't been in years. The public library. I used to take Laura and Michael there when they were little. Back then, my biggest worry was late fees. Now I was hunting for the truth like my life depended on it. Because it did. I asked the librarian for help using the computer. My hands shook as I typed in the company name from the documents. And then I saw it. A construction firm. 3 properties. 2 trucks, and one familiar name listed as silent owner. Richard Collins. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. Under authorized signatures, there were 2 names, Richard Collins and Margaret Collins. I leaned back hard in the chair. No, I whispered. I zoomed in. The signature was close, very close, but it wasn't mine. Richard didn't just lie to me. He committed fraud. And suddenly, everything looked different. I left the library with my heart pounding and my head spinning. I didn't know what to do next. Lawyers cost money, and I barely had enough for groceries. That night, my phone rang again. Sandra. Did you look at the papers? She asked. Yes, I said, and if you're right, he forged my name. She exhaled. I knew it. Why are you helping me? I asked quietly. There was a pause. Because he lied to me too, she said, and because I saw the way he talked about you, like you were already gone. My throat tightened. He told me you were sick, she continued, that you didn't understand finances, that you agreed to everything. I closed my eyes. He made me feel like a thief, she said. I won't be part of that. 2 days later, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to see a lawyer. Not Richard's lawyer. Mine. His office was small and crowded with books. His name was Thomas Reed. He had gray hair, kind eyes, and he actually listened. I told him everything. From the lunches I packed, to the papers I signed without reading, to the folder from Sandra. When I finished, my voice was hoarse. He leaned back and steepled his fingers. Margaret, he said slowly, do you realize what this means? I shook my head. It means, he said, your divorce settlement may be built on lies. My heart skipped. But I already signed, I whispered. It's done. He shook his head. Not if fraud is involved. I felt dizzy. If your husband forged your signature, he continued, and hid marital assets, the agreement can be challenged. Challenged? The word echoed in my head like a bell. So I'm not crazy, I asked. I'm not just a bitter old woman. Thomas smiled gently. No, you're someone who was deceived. We moved fast. Thomas filed a request for a review of the settlement. He asked for full financial disclosure. And then he sent Richard a notice. I didn't know how Richard would react. I found out the next day. He showed up at my rented room. Unannounced. I heard his voice outside, sharp and angry. Margaret, open this door. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. He stormed inside like he owned the place. What the hell is this? He snapped, waving the legal notice in my face. I thought you wanted a clean break, I said quietly. You signed, he shouted. You cried, remember, you agreed. I looked him in the eye. No, I said, I trusted you. His face darkened. You're making a mistake, he said through clenched teeth. You don't know what you're doing. I took a breath. I know you forged my signature, I said. The room went silent. For 1 second, just one, his mask slipped. Then he laughed. You're imagining things, he said. You've always been emotional. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just watched him. And that scared him more than tears ever could. After he left, I sat down slowly. My knees were shaking. But inside, something felt different. Stronger. That evening, Laura called. I heard you're trying to reopen the divorce, she said sharply. Yes, I replied. Why are you doing this? She asked. Dad said you're being influenced by people. By the truth, I said. She sighed. Mom, please, you're embarrassing yourself. Those words hurt more than Richard's lies. I raised you, I said softly. I deserve honesty. There was silence. Then she hung up. Days passed. Then weeks. Thomas called me often. More documents, he said. More inconsistencies. More problems for your ex-husband. One afternoon, he called with a different tone. "Margaret," he said, "I need you to come in." When I arrived, he slid a file toward me. "This," he said, "changes everything." I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped, because inside was a document dated 20 years ago. A property deed, with both our names on it. A piece of land Richard told me was worthless. Land he secretly developed. Land now worth more than the house I lost. "I remember this," I whispered. "He told me it was nothing." Thomas nodded. He lied again. My hands clenched. "So what happens now?" I asked. Thomas looked at me carefully. "Now," he said, "we see how far Richard is willing to go to keep the truth buried." And I suddenly realized something chilling. If Richard had lied this much, what else was he hiding? And who else knew? The truth had started to set me free, but it was also pulling me toward something dangerous. Richard didn't call again. That silence worried me more than his shouting ever had. People who are guilty don't stay quiet unless they are planning something. Thomas warned me. "Be careful," he said. "When people feel cornered, they make mistakes, sometimes dangerous ones." I laughed weakly. I'm a 64-year-old woman living behind a hair salon. How dangerous can this get? He didn't laugh back. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning. I returned from the grocery store and found my door slightly open. I knew I locked it. My heart slammed against my ribs as I pushed the door wider. Everything looked normal at first. The bed was still made. The chair was still by the window. Then I saw the folder. The folder Sandra gave me was gone. My legs went weak. I searched everywhere, under the bed, in the drawer, inside my suitcase. Nothing. Someone had been here, and they knew exactly what to take. I sat on the bed, shaking when my phone rang. "Richard." I stared at the screen. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then I picked up. "You're crossing a line, Maggie," he said calmly. My blood ran cold. "Did you come into my room?" I asked. He chuckled. "You always were careless with your things." "You stole my papers," I said. "They were never yours," he replied, "just like everything else." I swallowed hard. "You forged my name." Silence. Then his voice changed, lower, sharper. "You don't have proof." "You took it," I said. "Exactly," he replied. "So be smart, drop this nonsense." My hands trembled. "Or what?" Another pause. "Or things get uncomfortable." The call ended. I sat there long after the screen went dark. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. Richard wasn't just protecting money. He was protecting a secret. I called Thomas immediately. "This is serious," he said. "But you're not alone. Do you still have copies?" "Yes," I said. "You scanned everything." "Good," he replied. Then let him panic. Panic. That word gave me a strange comfort. Because for the first time in decades, Richard was afraid. Sandra called that night. "I think he knows about me," she said, her voice tight. "What happened?" I asked. "He showed up at my office," she said, uninvited, smiling. My stomach clenched. "What did he say?" "That I should stay quiet," she replied, "for my own good." I closed my eyes. "He's desperate," I said. "And dangerous," she added. A week later, the court ordered Richard to submit full financial records. That's when the real cracks began to show. Thomas called me, excitement in his voice. "He's stalling," he said, claiming records were lost. "Lost," I repeated. "Yes," Thomas said, "but banks don't lose records, Margaret." I smiled for the first time in days. Richard finally showed up in court. He looked different. Thinner. Angrier. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. I didn't look away. For 41 years, I lowered my eyes. Not today. The judge spoke calmly, firmly. "Mr. Collins," she said, Failure to provide accurate records may result in penalties. Richard nodded stiffly. His lawyer whispered to him. Richard clenched his jaw. Then Thomas stood. Your Honor, he said, we believe there are additional assets hidden under shell companies. Richard slammed his hand on the table. That's a lie, he shouted. The room went quiet. The judge raised an eyebrow. Control yourself, Mr. Collins. I watched his face turn red. This was the man who once told me to smile more. Now he couldn't control himself. After court, Michael finally called me. Mom, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. Dad is acting strange, he said. He keeps asking if you told anyone anything. I took a deep breath. Michael, I said, did you ever wonder why I never handled the money? There was silence. He said you didn't want to, Michael replied. I almost laughed. I wanted to, I said. I just wasn't allowed. Another pause. I didn't know, he said softly. No, I replied, you didn't. That night, I sat alone, listening to rain hit the roof. For years, I blamed myself. For trusting. For signing. For staying quiet. But now I saw the truth clearly. Richard didn't just steal my money. He stole my voice. And I was taking it back. The next morning, Thomas called with urgency. Margaret, he said, we found something. What? I asked. A transfer, he replied. A large one just before the divorce. My heart raced. Transferred where? I asked. He hesitated. To an account, not in his name. I gripped the phone. Whose name? There was a pause. Then Thomas said the words that made my chest tighten. Your daughter's name. The room spun. Laura. My knees buckled and I sat down hard. No, I whispered. She wouldn't. I don't know if she knew, Thomas said carefully, but her name is on the account. My hands shook violently. Betrayal from a husband was pain. Betrayal from a child was something else entirely. That evening, Laura showed up at my door. Her eyes were red. Mom, she said, we need to talk. I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around the tiny room, shame crossing her face. I didn't know, she said quickly. Dad said it was temporary. Temporary what? I asked. Moving money, she said. He said it was to protect it. I stared at her. From who? I asked. She didn't answer. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, I wasn't crying. I was thinking. Because if Richard involved our daughter, then the truth was bigger than I imagined. And once it came out, it would change everything. For all of us. The courtroom was quiet in a way that felt heavy, like the air itself was waiting. I sat on the wooden bench with my hands folded in my lap. They were steady now. I noticed that before anything else. Months ago, those same hands shook when I signed papers through tears. Today, they didn't. Richard sat across the room. He no longer looked powerful. His shoulders were hunched. His expensive suit hung loosely on his thinner frame. He kept wiping sweat from his forehead, even though the room was cool. For the first time in our 41 years together, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Be seated, she said. My heart thumped, slow and loud. This was it. Thomas stood and spoke clearly. He laid everything out. The forged signatures. The hidden companies. The land Richard said was worthless. The money transferred to Laura's account. Each fact landed like a stone, dropped into water. Richard's lawyer tried to interrupt, tried to explain, tried to soften the damage. But the truth doesn't soften. It cuts. Richard shook his head again and again, whispering, "This is ridiculous," as if saying it enough times would make it real. Then the judge turned to him. "Mr. Collins," she said, "did you or did you not forge your wife's signature on these documents?" Richard opened his mouth. closed it, opened it again. I don't remember, he said. The room murmured. The judge's eyes hardened. Convenient, she said. Laura sat behind me. I felt her presence before I heard her cry. Soft, broken. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because if I did, I might lose the strength I fought so hard to find. The judge took a long breath. Based on the evidence presented, she said, this court finds that the divorce settlement was obtained through deception and fraud. My chest tightened. Richard's head snapped up. What? He shouted. She raised her hand. You will remain silent. My ears rang. Fraud. The word echoed through me like thunder. The settlement is hereby void, the judge continued. All marital assets will be reevaluated and redistributed fairly. Richard's face drained of color. And, she added, this court is referring this matter for criminal investigation. Richard stood up so fast his chair fell backward. This is a mistake, he yelled. She agreed, she signed. I stood too. My voice surprised even me. I trusted you, I said. The judge looked at me gently. Mrs. Collins, she said, you are free to sit. Free. That word hit me harder than any slap Richard ever gave me with his silence. Outside the courtroom, the sun felt brighter than it had in years. Thomas smiled at me. You were brave, he said. No, I replied softly. I was tired of being quiet. Sandra stood a few steps away when our eyes met. She nodded. Thank you. I nodded back. Laura approached me slowly. Mom, she whispered. I turned to her. She looked small, younger than her years, like the child who once held my hand crossing the street. I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I didn't understand, he scared me. I took a deep breath. I know, I said, but fear doesn't excuse betrayal. She nodded, wiping her face. Will you forgive me? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Because forgiveness is not a switch. It's a journey. We'll see, I said honestly. Richard was taken aside by officers. As they walked him away, he looked back at me. Really looked. Not like a possession. Not like a problem. But like someone he no longer controlled. His mouth opened. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to blame. I didn't wait to hear it. I turned away. Weeks later, I moved out of the rented room behind the salon. Not into the old house. Into a small place of my own. Sunlight filled the kitchen in the mornings. I bought one chair. One table. Only what I needed. I learned how to check bank statements. How to ask questions. How to say no. Sometimes, at night, I still thought about the day I signed those papers crying. How broken I felt. How small. But now I understood something important. Those tears were not weakness. They were the end of my silence. The truth didn't just set me free. It gave me back myself. And for the first time in decades, I was finally ready to live on my own terms. Thanks for watching. Kindly drop your comment about this story. And please subscribe to this channel and on the notification for more interesting stories.